Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Sophia Elizabeth Lambert. I'm a published author of two books titled Hope Deferred and Mentoring Boys to Become Men of Integrity. Today, we are continuing with our series in mentoring boys to become men of integrity, and we're looking at men needing to get better for themselves. It has been said that men and boys are treated as disposables. They have historically been the first to war, the first into a burning building, the last a sinking ship, to exit a sinking ship. Annually, thousands of men die doing dangerous jobs. They struggle privately with issues that no one knows about. They have been victims of rape and molestation, and as a reluctant society, we have been deaf to their cries. Those difficulties have made them feel invincible, forcing them to hide their pain and the things that have broken them. It is for those reasons that I'm having a conversation today with my special guest, Mr. Trey Etheridge of Men Pack Ministries today. Beg your pardon. Trey Etheridge left corporate America to pursue the Lord's calling and is now the founder and director of Men Passionate About Christ Ministries, Impact. What started as four men in his living room 5 years ago has grown into a worldwide focus on men, their sin issues, and who they truly become as forgiven, holy, justified, redeemed, and righteous men of God when they believe in the blood and resurrection of Jesus Christ. Impact's mission is to help men worldwide discover the power of God's grace one man at a time, helping them overcome and heal through knowing their true identity in Christ Jesus. Trey's passion is for men to open up and to get real about who they are in a judgment and condemnation free environment. Impact's group meet throughout the week locally and worldwide in virtual meetings as well. Trey hosts two podcasts per week to help men everywhere in their Christian walk. And because of his expertise, I am happy to say welcome, Trey. Thank you for being with me
Thank you.
today so that we can help some men to continue their healing process.
Uh, you know, it, Sophia, it made my day when you reached out to me, and I'm excited to be here and share and maybe share some stories of some of our guys, and if it can just help one man overcome, then our time is well spent today. So I do appreciate you having me here.
You are welcome. So, how would you say that we can help some men to heal from the challenges that they have experienced, the difficulties, and some of their pains? What is it that your group or you have been doing to help men?
Well, that's a great question. As you said in your introduction, you said a couple of things that really stuck out to me. You talked about men kind of being warriors, and that what we're charged with doing, and
Yes.
we are. I don't want to. We're groomed and grown to go fight the war, or to win the battle, or win the game, or win the beautiful woman, or sire a lot of great children, and all those ho macho things, and we kind of get conditioned to, we need to live that lifestyle, and there's a lot of pitfalls in that, because it's all about improving myself. I got to do this better, I got to do that better, and it finally, that type of lifestyle, that heart set and that mindset, um, caught up with me about 12 years ago, where I was on the verge of committing suicide. And the it was by the grace of God that night it didn't happen. And that's a long story. Um, but the revelation I had that night was, I'd been wearing a mask for so long, and everything bad that had ever happened to me, or things I felt like God would never forgive me of, I just kind of pressed down and just bottled them up, put a lid on them, and just stuck them inside and just let them sit there. And there are men just like me with that type of mindset and heart set everywhere, because we're supposed to be macho. We're not supposed to show weakness. We're not supposed to show sensitivity. We're taught it's terrible if we are defeated at something, and I'm as competitive as anyone else. So that's a tough one for me to get. Um, and I got past my suicidal experience, and with the Lord's help, I realized that night that Jesus had never left me, that I was truly forgiven for everything I'd ever done. And I didn't really realize it until that night as I screamed out to him. And that was the seed that was planted for our ministry today. And it took a little while, but 5 years ago, I finally reached out to 4 close friends, and I said, "Enough's enough. I want to be with guys that want to be real about who we are as men, who we are as Christian men. Are we, how effective are we at being fathers and husbands and business leaders, and you know effective in the workplace, in the community, on our own?" Because I tried that on my own and self way of doing things for so many years, and I failed miserably. And we got together as 4 guys in the spirit of James chapter 5 verse 16. And the first few times we were together, we just looked at each other and we told someone else the worst about ourselves. But we felt safe. We knew that by sharing the worst about ourselves, we were going to be loved more instead of less for it. And that's kind of how this started. This Men Passionate About Christ impact started. And it's about taking off the mask and being vulnerable and peeling back the layers of your heart and looking inside and seeing how often we try to fill this hole in us with things other than Christ, with things other that aren't godly, and how that always leads to a place we don't want to go. So that's the nutshell of how the ministry started and what we try to focus on through all of our platforms that we reach men today.
Have you found, since your ministry has been growing, have you found where it's difficult for men to open up? I mean, I understand that when it started with your
Oh,
friends, it would have been easier because you knew each other. But
yeah,
for men who are complete strangers or feel threatened that what they share may be shared with others,
right.
have do you find them struggling to open up?
Yes, I do, and it is a process, Sophia. It does sometimes take a while. When men start inquiring about our ministry, our podcast, our meetings that we meet live locally, our Zoom meetings, or if they're just wanting to have a phone conversation or an email exchange with me or one of the other brothers that helps me, um, there has to be a level of trust that's built up. We have a charter, we have some ground rules. With the 4 guys in my living room, it was within a few weeks there were 6, and then there were 8, and then all of a sudden people started coming in that I didn't know. I met them for the first time, and we actually had to leave my house because we guaranteed a room full of confidentiality. There would be nothing that would leave the walls. Anything said was going to be approached in a non-judgmental, non-condemning way, but just that piece of that man opening his mouth and getting those things out, you see a healing process begin. And so we actually moved to a private room at a local restaurant for breakfast. And after about a month or a month and a half, there were some men that would come in and sit there and not say a word. And then after a while, you just saw just little things happening, the little pieces of the mask being taken off, and some of the revelation, and men that would just say, okay, this has been haunting me for so long. I've never told anyone this story, but it's been there for 40 years and I don't know how to shake it because I think about it every day. And those are the type of discussions that all of a sudden started happening. And as men started confessing sins, knowing that it was safe, knowing that no one was going to go home and talk to their wives about it, or anything else, knowing that they had that safe place, it was amazing the stories that came out of men that just would think, man, God can't forgive me for this one. Or, Trey, are you telling me God will forgive me for this? Um, can I give you a specific example? I'll make it anonymous, but we had this one gentleman who was joining us, and he was a pastor's son and grew up in the church. And he came to a few meetings, and he didn't say a word other than just listen. And he had a little notepad, and he would take some notes. And brothers were sharing. They were sharing their problems with pornography. They were sharing their problems with extramarital affairs. They were sharing their problems with lust or alcohol or drugs. They were sharing their problems with money or idolatry, just trying to keep up with the, other people that are doing things in the world. And all these things were coming to light. And finally, this man, there was a lull. And this man, I'll leave him nameless. He just said, Jenny Smith. He just mentioned a woman's name. And I said, yeah. And he started crying. And we don't follow up immediately. We just let him get it out. And but he sat there for like a minute and a half and not saying a word. And I said, well, tell me about Jenny Smith. And he said, she was my first sexual experience. And I said, okay. And he said, she was 14 years old. I was with my brother and some friends, and there were several of us with this one girl one night. And I can't shake it. I don't think God will ever forgive me for that. He says, what God set up as a holy union between a man and a woman, I had relegated it to being drunk with other guys involved. And he had never said a word about that. This man was 57 years old when he told me that story that happened to him when he was 14. And as he started talking and just thinking, there's no way God will ever forgive me for that. And this man is a pastor's son. You could just see the weight just kind of coming off of his shoulders as he continued to talk. And then we went into what the gospel truly meant and what Jesus's blood truly means. And it was one of the most powerful mornings we had. Is this brother that, like I said, grew up in the church, that he had that type of event that had haunted him his whole life. He felt so much shame and so much regret. And he was able to get past it. And I talk to him to this day, and he goes, that very seldom enters my mind anymore because of what happened that morning.
That story that you shared, it has
Mm-hmm.
been, it's something that I have personally wrestled with in the fact that I have heard, because I've mentored boys, I have
Mm-hmm.
had similar stories shared with me.
Mm-hmm.
And I can say it appears to be a cultural, or not a geographical culture, but a male culture to have what I call gang rape.
Mm.
Um, there are many women, and I'll share a report that um, an incident that was reported last year in Jamaica where a group of guys sodomized a girl.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't a vaginal rape. They had sodomized her, all about
Mm-hmm.
3 or 4 of them,
Mm-hmm.
and it rocked us as a society.
Sure.
Because for me, it showed. For me, I thought it was a progression from the gang vaginal rape to now a gang sodomy rape.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering how can people like yourself make or help guys who are struggling with, if let's say a group of friends approach a friend and say, hey, let's do this. How can a young man, what would you encourage a young man to be bold enough to stand, to be that one boy or man or young man to
Mm-hmm.
say no, I will
Yeah.
not do it. There's a guy who once told me that he did not participate, but he sat and watched.
Mm-hmm.
So how can we help them to see, as you said, the impact that it will make on them, and
Mm-hmm.
how to say no as well?
That that's well, that is a deep, deep question. The circumstance I gave you was was not quite as severe. It was not a great situation at all, but that's just how he was indoctrinated to sex, and it skewed him for the next 15 years as some other things happened in his life. His idea of sexuality was totally skewed, and it led to some pregnancies that were terminated, and with women that he dated, and all of these things. It kind of set the stage for him for some things that happened later that weren't good either. You follow what I'm saying? And um, I would say to that young man that is there is the one thing we dive into more than anything else is what's our identity? Who are we? If we are Christian men, if we believe in the blood of the cross and the resurrection of Jesus, our identity changes. Okay. And so my words to that man that I spoke about the story earlier was, this, you love Jesus. Jesus loves you. That is no longer what you did 40 years ago is not who you are anymore. So you can rest in the forgiveness of that and put it aside and let it go. To our new guys, the younger Christians, or even the younger men that might not be Christians, uh, we ask them to look deep inside about who are you truly. And if you're Johnny, okay, what does that mean? Well, tell me a little bit about your background, how you were brought up, your mom and dad, your family life. And if you're Johnny and you're not a Christian, we always say, if you're in that situation, play the tape until the end. Just imagine that the second the guys rally around you and ask you, hey, there's somebody willing and let's go, or there's somebody not willing and let's go. The second that happens and they ask you that, begin a process in your heart and your mind. If they started filming this right now, how is the tape going to end? 9 times out of 10 in a situation like that, 10 times out of 10, the movie's not going to end well. So we try to talk to them in those type of terms. And even men today, through the older men, the more seasoned guys, that we have temptations every day that we get up, we're tempted on something, and we create an atmosphere and a communication system where men, I've got a group of men that if they just send me a different emoji on their phone that they've never sent me before, I know something's up. They're contemplating something, or something's going through their mind or their heart. I'm going to give them a call. And I'm going to talk to them at that moment. So I'm rambling a little bit here, but what I'm trying to say is, number one, play the tape out to the end. When this is over, when this night's over, you're going to wake up in the morning, look at yourself in the mirror, and say, hey, I persevered? Or are you going to look at yourself in the mirror and go, oh man, what was that last night? And we go through that exercise with men all the time of all ages. So not sure if that helps much, but that's kind of the way we approach things with the guys.
That, yes, that was fantastic. Because the question of who am I is very important and it's asked by everyone. So for a young man to be able to look into himself and see, answer that question, just to who am I really? Who am
Mm.
I? Who is it that I want to become?
Mm-hmm.
So that is a very good question to ask. I, if you don't mind sharing just some other experiences that you are aware of that you know can help a young man to overcome or to know that he's not alone. How is it that
Yeah.
they can get better for themselves by
Well,
the
you
choices
know,
that they make?
for the younger guys, I mean, I always use sports figures, and I don't want to date how old I am, but I read a book by the NBA player Larry Bird years ago, and Michael Jordan says pretty much the same thing in his writings. The writings about him is, I'm only as successful as the people I surround myself with. It makes a huge difference on who you surround yourself with, and do they have those goals of growth. um, I know a young man and I'll give this story. I know this young man that was an A student through his junior year of high school. He was accepted to go to the college he wanted to go to, and he still had a year of school to go, but he just kind of checked out and turned it off and started hanging around some guys that, smoking a little, doing a few drugs, party scene. And he just lost his motivation for going to class. And after the course of that senior year finished and he's getting ready to go away to college, he gets a call from that college saying, hey, we saw your final grades and they're not sufficient anymore. So we're withdrawing your acceptance into our university. And he was shattered. And he was shattered so much that he there was a way out for him to get back into that college, but it involved a lot of extra scholastic work, and his heart wasn't there. And I just saw him continuing to flounder and flounder and flounder. He moved out of his home to with some guys that didn't have any ambition at all, and they're young. Their ambition might come later, but at this moment, he was not surrounding himself with the right people. And one day he woke up, and he was an American football player, a lacrosse player, really good athlete, and all of a sudden he realized this really good group of people that he used to hang around with, they're no longer here in this town anymore. They've all gone off to college and the big jobs and starting families and all that. And he finally woke up and just realized, I have surrounded myself with the wrong crowd. And that's a hard thing to get to a young man, because we try to posture ourselves to be superior, and I'm going to hang around with the cool kids and all those other things. And this young man woke up one day and said, that's it. I'm going to make something of my life. He enlisted in the Navy. He's now an electrical nuclear engineer on a submarine. And when he gets out of the Navy next year,
Wow.
he's going to be marketable to every private company to make a very good living. And he hasn't started a family yet. He's still single. He's in his younger 20s, and he, just by who he surrounded himself with, helped him steer him out. And he joins we have a call every Monday night that he joins frequently, and joins in with our young men's group that we meet on a Zoom call every Monday night. So that would be one thing I would say is, look around yourself. Who are your friends? Are they bringing you up? Are you bringing them up? Or is it the other way around?
That is so true. The company you keep can, as they say, either make you or break you.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my final question for this segment is, we see men struggling emotionally, psychologically. What would your advice be to them for them to allow the Lord to heal their brokenness?
Yeah.
Um, Go ahead.
Yeah, that's near and dear to our heart right now up here in Florida. One of our brothers, that's part of Impact. Um, his dad is a personal friend of mine, and I know, and I'm going to use their first names because I know they won't care. And his 23, 4 year old son, his name's Alexander, and his dad is GT. And Alexander had a servant's heart, but he struggled so much with anxiety, stress, depression, and then you put on top of that a substance abuse problem, and it's just a recipe for nothing good. And GT and his wife Tracy, who are dear friends of mine, for 10 years, he has struggled through these, and he is also on medication for the anxiety, depression, which he never took. He was so prideful and just wouldn't take it. And sure enough, on February 7th, he overdosed, and we lost him. And that's becoming more and more prevalent in our society here in the United States. And I'm not sure about when you're where you are, but we're getting more and more of these young people that are, I read the article last week that 5 out of 10 teenagers say they have depression symptoms now. So how do we handle that? And as a church, and I say this just from the perspective of where I'm sitting, we're really, really good if someone has cancer, or if a hurricane comes and blows your house down, or if someone has a heart attack or they lose their job. The church is really good about rallying around and helping that. The church handles that well. But when it comes to depression, anxiety, emotional things, mental illness, church really doesn't know it. We don't know how to put our hands around that right now, I don't think. And that's just my opinion, but I see it. And it's tough to have those conversations with those people, other than just listening to what's on their heart and trying to find a way for them to vent it out and then get them help. I'm no psychiatrist, psychologist, so it's out of my wheelhouse. But if someone does come up to me with depression, anxiety, or emotional issues, I ask a lot of questions, and then I be quiet and I let them speak. And as I learn more, I know, okay, this guy's got an alcohol problem. I've got a man in my ministry that was redeemed and overcame, and he was saved from alcohol through Christ. Or someone's got a pornography problem that leads to the depression and isolation that pornography causes. That's half the battle, is you isolate yourself so much. I know I've got somebody that can help them with that. So our ministry serves as a support type system, and then we will try to steer them to more professional, educated or trained people to deal with the emotional, deep emotional, mental illness type situations.
Um, you mentioned earlier about your struggle with suicide ideation. I'm sure, well, because of studies I've seen where young men have been struggling and have committed suicide, we it seemed to be having growing since the pandemic started.
Mm-hmm.
So, in our next, if you don't mind sharing, in our next segment, is it possible for you to share some of the struggles so that the young men and men who see this will be able to say that, to
Yeah.
know that they're not unique at all, because the Bible does
No.
tell us that our sins are not unique.
No, not at
It's a
all. You're
common
right.
thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, okay, I let me just change or end this segment. Viewers, thank you for watching. I ask that you see part two of this discussion with Mr. Trey. So, thank you for watching. Have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.